The studio lights felt hotter than usual as Blake Shelton sat back in his chair, one boot crossed casually over the other, his trademark half-smile hiding a tension that hadn't been there when he walked onto the set. The View audience buzzed with the usual daytime energy, clapping on cue, laughing when expected, but something underneath the polished rhythm felt off, like a guitar string pulled just a little too tight. Blake had done hundreds of interviews. He knew the dance. Smile, joke, deflect, move on. But this wasn't following the usual steps. Joy Behar leaned forward, her cards resting on the table, eyes sharp with curiosity that bordered on challenge. The conversation had drifted from Blake's music to his public persona, then into cultural territory that always seemed to invite sparks. At first, Blake played along, tossing out humor, letting laughter soften the edges. The audience responded warmly. Even Whoopi nodded, sensing a lively but manageable exchange. Then Joy pressed harder. She questioned Blake's authenticity, implying that his down home image was a costume carefully worn for ratings and applause. The words were wrapped in humor, but the sting was clear. A few murmurs rippled through the audience. Blake's smile froze for half a second too long. He glanced down, then back up, eyes steady now, no longer playful. "I've been called a lot of things," Blake said calmly, his Oklahoma drawl grounding every syllable. "But fake ain't usually one of them." Joy laughed, waving a hand dismissively. "Oh come on, Blake. Everyone in Hollywood plays a role. You just play yours with a cowboy hat." That did it. Something shifted, subtle but undeniable. Blake leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees, no longer lounging. The room quieted, instinctively aware they were crossing from banter into something real. Cameras adjusted, zooming in, catching the seriousness in his face. "You know what the difference is," he said. "Some of us grew up the way we talk about. We didn't learn it in a writer's room." The audience gasped softly, then fell silent. Joy's smile thinned. She fired back, questioning his political opinions, his fans, even the sincerity of country music itself in today's world. Each question landed sharper than the last, like she was daring him to snap. Blake didn't raise his voice. That was what made it so powerful. He straightened, shoulders squared, eyes locked on Joy. "I make music for people who feel ignored," he said. "People who work hard, mess up, love their families, and don't always have the right words to defend themselves on TV." Joy interrupted, but Blake gently lifted a hand, not aggressively, just enough to signal he wasn't finished. The audience noticed. Even the co-hosts paused. "You asked me here to talk," he continued. "Not to be lectured about who I'm allowed to be or who I'm allowed to represent." The applause came suddenly, loud and unplanned. Whoopi looked surprised. Sunny shifted in her seat. Joy's expression hardened, clearly unprepared for the wave of support rolling toward Blake. She tried to redirect, suggesting that public figures should be held accountable for the messages they send. "I agree," Blake said quickly. "Which is why I'm saying this clearly. I don't tear people down for applause. I don't pretend to be smarter than the folks watching at home. And I sure don't sit at a table telling someone else their life isn't real enough." The room was electric now. Producers backstage exchanged worried looks as social media monitors lit up. Viewers at home leaned closer to their screens, sensing they were watching a moment that would be replayed again and again. Joy pushed back in her chair, crossing her arms. "So now you're the victim." Blake shook his head slowly. "No ma'am, I'm just not your punching bag." That line hit like thunder. The audience erupted, clapping, some standing. The co-hosts looked stunned. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but for the first time, words didn't come easily. The power dynamic had flipped in real time. Blake took a breath, his voice softer now but no less firm. "We can disagree," he said. "That's fine. But respect doesn't stop at the edge of this table." For a moment, no one spoke. The cameras lingered, capturing the raw stillness. This wasn't rehearsed. This wasn't safe. It was a man drawing a line on live television, refusing to play the role written for him. As the show cut to commercial, the applause continued, echoing through the studio. Blake leaned back again, but the casual ease from earlier was gone. He knew what had just happened. Hollywood would be talking. And when the lights came back on, nothing about the conversation would be the same. When the cameras came back from commercial, the energy in the studio had completely transformed. The polite daytime television atmosphere had vanished, replaced by a tense, almost breathless anticipation. The audience was quieter now, sitting forward in their seats, aware they were witnessing something far beyond a routine interview. Blake Shelton adjusted himself in his chair, his expression composed but alert, like someone who knew the storm wasn't over yet. Joy Behar broke the silence first. Her voice was measured, but there was an unmistakable edge beneath it. She attempted to reframe the conversation, suggesting that the show was simply engaging in honest dialogue, and that Blake might be taking things too personally. It was an olive branch of sorts, but wrapped in enough defensiveness to make it fragile. Blake nodded slowly, listening without interrupting. When she finished, he exhaled through his nose, a quiet sigh that carried more meaning than words. "Honest dialogue works both ways," he replied. "But when the questions start sounding like accusations, people stop listening and start bracing." The audience murmured in agreement. Even those who didn't necessarily share Blake's views could sense the fairness in his words. This wasn't about politics or music anymore. It was about respect and being heard. Joy pushed again, pointing out Blake's influence and responsibility as a public figure. She argued that with fame came scrutiny, and that criticism was part of the deal. Blake didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned slightly toward the table, his tone steady and deliberate. "I've been scrutinized my whole career," he said. "By critics, by executives, by people who think country music should disappear. That's fine. What I won't accept is being talked down to like the people who support me don't matter." That sentence landed hard. The applause that followed wasn't explosive this time, but deep and sustained, like a collective acknowledgement. Whoopi raised her eyebrows, clearly impressed by Blake's composure. Sunny glanced toward Joy, then back to Blake, sensing the momentum had shifted again. Joy attempted humor, joking that Blake was winning over the crowd. But the joke fell flat. The audience didn't laugh. They weren't here for punchlines anymore. They were here for truth. Blake offered a small, respectful smile. "I'm not trying to win anything," he said. "I just want the same courtesy everyone else at this table expects." For a moment, Joy looked genuinely taken aback. The usual rhythm she controlled so effortlessly had slipped from her grasp. She shuffled her cards, searching for footing, while the silence stretched longer than daytime television ever allows. Whoopi finally stepped in, her voice calm but firm. She acknowledged that the conversation had gotten heated and suggested taking a breath. But even as she spoke, it was clear. The defining moment had already happened. The audience had chosen its side not based on ideology, but on authenticity. Joy turned back to Blake, her tone softer now, less confrontational. She said she didn't intend to insult his fans or his upbringing. Blake accepted the words with a nod, but didn't rush to smooth things over. "I appreciate that," he said. "And I'm not asking anyone here to agree with me. I'm just asking you not to reduce my life, or anyone else's, to a stereotype." That line resonated deeply. Social media exploded in real time. Clips were already circulating, captions flashing phrases like, "calm but devastating," and "unexpected mic drop." Viewers at home paused, replayed, and shared the exchange, sensing they were watching a rare moment of unscripted television honesty. Joy tried one last time to reclaim control, asking Blake if he regretted coming on the show. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "No," he said. "I think conversations like this need to happen. I just didn't expect to have it like this." The audience laughed lightly, tension easing just a bit. But the weight of what had occurred remained. This wasn't a walk-off or a shouting match. That's what made it so powerful. Blake had stayed. He had spoken. And he had refused to be diminished. As the segment wrapped up, Whoopi thanked Blake for joining them. The applause was immediate and heartfelt. Blake stood, tipping an imaginary hat toward the audience before turning to the hosts. He shook hands politely, even with Joy, who offered a tight but respectful smile. Backstage, producers whispered urgently, already aware that this moment would dominate entertainment news. Headlines would be written, opinions would clash, and Hollywood would debate who was right or wrong. But none of that could undo what viewers had felt in that room. As Blake walked off set, his phone buzzed nonstop. Messages poured in from fellow artists, fans, and even critics who admired how he handled himself. He didn't check them right away. Instead, he paused in the hallway, taking a deep breath, grounding himself before stepping back into the noise of fame. Later that night, clips of the exchange played on loop across television and online platforms. Some called it shocking, others called it overdue, but most agreed on one thing. Blake Shelton hadn't destroyed anyone with insults or anger. He did something far more unexpected. He stayed calm. He stood his ground. And in doing so, he exposed how powerful quiet conviction can be when the whole world is watching.